Ato abusanfremo mu nyina aha UTV so eni omayi mu ene amakodo so nsem ayensa kane aboabo no eno na edru so ayede ebramu efri abeka junction ewo ekrakropon mu na this way chocolate drink osudio hia ene enso share special ice ene nsu mu ode ene mu eyekrogin ena fe special drinks ene nso mu gwahodo do pe bia no omenya bi ede amount sa enyumako ene aboafo enkae na akabom asoyasene ede awie pram to reka sebo no ebramu sanso ena DSTV channel 360 Sebono ye try eguso da debedi emu akotini bi enie Runner Motors ayakia assembly plant no se said ye nyanim sama enomo wo na enra ena abrewa yipuma kwamu ema wodwumadie wonum ebia no mana na adankwa kufu ado Ghana mampanyi ekokasa ewo ase na adankwa kufu ado aboma Megatrude araba esaba tokonudi so no enenye chief justice no dia tudwa se wo se Okopie appointment committee of parliament and Nimetun Semisahudo Ede Emaneno. Tanso ena edom kuma ewo mrashe bedwafie wonom da ebanu dani a wonu onunyam for Dr. Ato Forsen. What they are two just say. Eye Professor Frimpong Boatin ne reporto fagram say wonu egu aban animals papa. Tanso ena Israel eno eye brono ewo enkramantam hase adisha omotete wonum ede atudwa se kwan omonam so no enkoye kwana sa ameka se wo ho ache saban anya bibi amfa ho a kese emo awonum ewa konensa bebre eso ebusafo wei ane ensem bia ebi account na editie na edihwe ane aso no so kroji a yede ebramo ewo UTV so ewo enkran abeka junction Midday ede afia ede twumwa nosa me ene awie pram to reka se bono de ebramo afi emu ensem ankasa enie ene eye wiase samtrofo ene de obofo nyina daye dapon dakase oboni bese word Freedom Day, World Press Freedom Day, na no, ena Ghana hase no, 1 year etro the bo enkata ahudo, ene 1 year etro and some ekogu abefo, internet so much private newspapers and online news publishers association kono, ede krata aba abonten. Na krata de aba abonten no, Ghana and some trofon the bofo ye juma dia yashi and sapo mu so de ye dia bo Ghana mino, and no ho eno mo ebo abaso, waso share and some trojuma ni mo ye pa ye share wo how abredie ni akwanhye bebre ewo mu ebi kura timi famu wu ebi timi famu didam ebi krampo ni yetimi fom ho abufo ekodi wonom enamfonom ene o mabusuafo nyina edem ne so be wie che na so ya da so ahye ho de wadwuma ni mu a ye ede aboa oman Ghana na so no wose wo how ye hia no ya na ekutia ye pa no ntino enne eye ewiase nyina samtrofo ndobofo eda ponda no wonom ede sansem wei ebo Ghana ensamtrofo nyina abaso esa ye dwumaden ede aboa oman Ghana yetu ho acha yede asum oman Ghana no mu chese aso ani ye akro ya nso ye nam sa kwa no so eboa ama kamam kabi democracy etumi agihiye pa ewo omemu wo de no eto nchen a wo chese kwan bi e wo se empanyufo efaso na wo mu edigu akwan so ebon samtrofo ndobofo ko ban ewo madwuma ye mu no ja yetumi eye na no betumi aboa ama ehunahuna kai na afenso ye intimidation bi etoda bi a yetumi eyeditia ensamtrofo ndobofo ewo memu no ne nyina etumi etwa na no echi no say eye afi World Press Freedom Day no e wosi etumi ejina so na obi bia wo pensamtrofo asem na adwuma samtrofo eye no nani eje ho no wo mu saafo ni nyina no wo mutumi kabom na afi wo mu defend eye media practitioners nampo ensamtrofo ndobofo ewo memu na ayakayaka de eyeditia wonu ma emmo ye die ne yenkanko ne yempuntuo nyina no yetumi ekasatia no echi wose o mera emu edi ye pa no ntino ensamtrofo abomode eboa yo madwumaden makamemeka bie ne niema bebre nkrofo ateniema siye na so nyina echi no na sabi ye ensamtrofo kakai edi wonum ani ewo memu a emfata se ebebasa na no ena private newspapers and online news publishers association koi wonom ede atudwa se ensamtrofo wo so obi atumi ehye ne hoden editor senior journalist fo nyina no obi atumi hye ne hoden na adwuma ye ne yetumi atoa so eye ede boa o my Ghana esanse dabi no yade a yaketua no ebetumi abaye wo de no atonchi a wo de ato government media handles fo nyina nim se ne die mada se ba se nsem bi ekoso no ebetumi abo o man nyina ya wo mu opin na nampo mu miemu e ma da obofo ne ensamtrofo nkaye ensam tumi enka bi na nyina ekabom ne ye ba kuma ye adwuma no ema etumi edimu na ekoba se mpempi no kopa ensam bi ewo abamu na abehwe na government media handlers no kwa na ekwa akodi wo mu ho ukogya se ye dempo na wonsanka sa information na emmoa ema ye adwuma no ho nka nko no entumi enkoso se de ye anansam twofo ndebofo ye hwehwe ewo memu no wo nsam ne de edoso ye pa na mu fa no ebo ensam twofo abaso ehye ensam twofo enkunan ewo ye adwuma ye no ho we eye ensama eye private newspapers and online news publishers association ikon ede aba eye opanyi Andrew Edwin Arthur Esquire ono na president opanyi pa oda no de nsa ahyase a watu bi ede amane ensam trofo ma UTV ensam trofo nso yensa etumi aka yendie abuzanfo ye to akase bono eso nana adodankwa ekufadu Ghana mampanyi abo mame Gertrude Araba Esaba tokono edinsai wono enenye Chief Justice nanam so ama say de wato no ama appointment committee of parliament say ja onkopie ho na nsemisa bi esefata no wo so entoto emane no.
Mr. Speaker, appointment of new Chief Justice of the Republic. I hope this finds you in good health and spirits. Chief Justice Kwesi Ani-Yeboah is due to retire from the bench on 24th May 2023, his 70th birthday. In order to avoid a vacuum in the office of the Chief Justice following his retirement, I have decided to initiate the process for the appointment of his successor. To that end, by a letter dated 25th April 2023, pursuant to Article 1441 of the Constitution, I consulted with the Council of State on my nominee, Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Tokonu, Justice of the Supreme Court, who has been on the Supreme Court for the last 4 years and has been a member of the judiciary for the last 19 years, to succeed Chief Justice Ani-Yeboah. The Council of State has notified me by a letter under the hand of the chairperson dated 28th April 2020 of the successful completion of the Constitution consultation process. Thus, in accordance with Article 1441 of the Constitution, I write to inform you that I've nominated Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Tokonu, the Justice of the Supreme Court, for approval by Parliament as the next Chief Justice. I enclose a copy of her CV for your attention. I'm fully satisfied that Justice Tokonu is duly qualified and eminently fit to occupy the office of Chief Justice. Mr. Speaker, it is my respectful hope that the approval by Parliament of Justice Tokonu can proceed expeditiously to enable her assume office as soon as practicable following the retirement of Chief Justice Ani-Yeboah. Thank you in advance. Yours sincerely, Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo. Honourable members, the nomination is hereby referred to the Appointments Committee for consideration and report.
And okoji loan anampobusi anhunhye loan agreement bi atum ewo mrahye bedwafi na no na edomkuma ewo mrahye bedwafi won no dani a woni Dr. Ato Forson akasade ato Ghana fo nyinanim se sa eyebosi anhunhye aija yakoji atum ne de wo mrahye bedwafi na wasa Ghana fo so aban pa achi ma otumi kirekire mu ye na obuhu akontampo kire wo mu na ne nyina mu no se wonim se aban no eye NDC fo nampodom kuma no wo mu mpene so ema sa ambre entumi emeye mbra emeye adwuma ewo memu na bana kasa nimse eja parliamentary and presidential prime minister enchebekoso wandi samanyoko mu nsno eye mashebedwafo dodo no a wo constituencies a wo ye campaign wagina so de abeto aba no achese wo mu eni nkra ha na aban gidigidi wa frame mashebedwafo nyina sa ombra omonye embra no entumi sanse onua ni mpefese se dom kuma fo nyina wo ho no manya de asa ambra no omodo mo sabehya ase age atumanu nti and
we in the NDC today objected to these loans, and I'm sure the arguments that were made on the floor are sufficient for you to capture for your news. However, it is important for me to say that at a time that the country is in debt distress, it is very wrong for the government to still consider and to have the courage to add on to our public debt. Only today, Parliament considered and approved $750 million. $750 million. The NDC minority opposed vehemently. The MPP thought this is the right time for them to ambush the NDC and to bring this loan for approval. Because this is coming at a time that the NDC members of Parliament are going through internal elections, our primaries. And obviously, most of us are contested heavily. And as a result, you don't expect everyone to be here. They've thought this is the best time to bring the loans. And obviously, they brought it and succeeded. We opposed it, but we are calling on the people of Ghana to hold this government accountable. The opposition all this time, we've been doing what we can with the numbers that were given to us by the electorate. But oftentimes, impressions are created as if it's only the opposition that should hold this government accountable. We call on the civil society organization and the well-meaning Ghanaians to join us in opposing this government vehemently. Because this is a government that will never learn. They will never learn. They are comfortable with the numbers that they have in Parliament. They are more than us by 1 or 2. And oftentimes they use these numbers, even though it's 1 and 2, they will push their business through. Today they are successful because they are more than us. Obviously, in a normal day, they are more than us by 1, and you need just simple majority to carry this. But clearly, the loan stinks to high heavens. The loans, these are loans that should not be allowed to go through in the first place. I urge this government that even though Parliament has approved, they should change the course and not to sign this loan into debt. I urge the Ministry of Finance to rethink, because they are feeling the heat already. Simple put, we have defaulted in repayment of all our external debt. Today we can't service our debt. Domestic debt, we can't service our domestic debt. We have defaulted, simple put. Our country is bankrupt and insolvent. Yet this government will never pull the brakes. They still want to accelerate and to increase the public debt. We are saddened and we caution them. We only urge the people of Ghana to join us in our position. We can only do what our numbers can permit us, and we did just that and opposed it, and you are witness to that.
Professor Frimpong Boatin a reporter Fagalam say who de aba abontin no edonkuma wo mrase dwafie wono ba no dani a woni onunyam for Dr. Atuforsen akasa ho amemu no de atodwa se aban panyufo wondin apie wo sa report mu no airtime enye na enim gwase pe wo se etumi ekasetia wo se ensem fatampo se aban panyin bi ka wo se ne din apie sa Galam say report no emu.
This house has approved millions of Ghana cedis of taxpayers' money for the so-called president's fight against illegal mining. However, what came as a shock to many, and as confirmed in the report, the Frimpong Boatin's report, is the overwhelming evidence which shows the extent of official complicity in the canker. Indeed, this report has confirmed that the state itself gave its blessing to the wanton destruction of our environment and forest reserves. Unfortunately, the report indicts many in government and provides both material and collaborative evidence that this House cannot ignore. This damning verdict comes on the heels of similar recent investigation by international news agency, the Al Jazeera, into the activities of an illicit gold smuggling syndicate operation in Ghana, with alleged close associate to the President of the Republic of Ghana and other government officials. Many have raised questions over the clear links between illegal mining activities in the country and this international gold smuggling syndicate, in what looks like an organized crime. Indeed, Clearly, the variations between reported volumes of gold that leaves the shores of Ghana lately and what is declared by our authorities lends credence to this fear. This House has been urged by the vast majority of our citizens to institute a bipartisan probe into this serious matter. We, on the side of this House, the NDC minority, support this call and shall take steps accordingly to activate processes for an independent probe into this matter in due course. So we urge you that in the coming days, don't be surprised to hear the NDC minority starting a process to constitute an independent probe into the Frimpong Boateng's report and that of the Al Jazeera investigative journalism piece that was aired on the issue of gold smuggling and that of Galamsey.
Abuzanfo ye to akase bono so manfo bekaya nano edwada de de rekusem bi tu dwese nunwa abrantie bi atwese kan atwitwa ne gire akum no ato atwene adaya ne yire nsi woja wade na so wonte ase na oku oba no wie no oba ne papa eye na senso wosa de se kan ebie ne tirimu ano so no e de nyankopon chaade papa ne de ne nkwa na sugita na wanto na nanom ewo ensiedo na ehwa ma ne bo abeto dwa kire se enne na abrewo Fuma kwemu Lekma District Magistrate Court ye do omo akohonom de di nka kra no nti ye nkwa homa no so na ye ne yensem tro ne Benjamin ni agbo atwetwe nkomo emfa we sanse wono ene yesoma ne so nkọ court honom na de besi bia no wontwa hu fonyini emekire yahwefo waba homa no so ben so timi nka promise be kase bozuni ma hen
yo me do so
boko de
nyame adwo
de SCB atwa hu fonyi kire
yo eti asama eti na no na police force say and then amode Isaac Newton kuma eba be piemu e court nti anope ya be piemu wo Lekma District Magistrate Court a omedi asem no nti be nondu ne fa na worship na abakwe enu efre asem no na ofre asem no na ebisai say or case bi no etu de nim say one wakoso meda and a second so wakoso ham eti odi ufo anase odi bim na odum say onye guilty ewo asema o metu enim aho na police prosecutor okra asem no eye Christopher Asante epeja ne say sorry na o ekire mo say emse funso kakra ewo case no nti no pese o correct time for so nti na ka worship ebe man ho kwan a nti no hono na worship ekire mo say ene sadia ene nanka ebe yi yanko mutu asem no fan seda na omutu ko ye nsiesia ewo ho na nsiesia na omo pese omo ye ne se eye mega case ene cousin ham no ye na asena osanso de second time omo de case nyina bom na e wo se omo separate case na mo hu se na omo di asem no ye de e ma original so e ma he worship na abakwe no etu asem no e de ase 22nd May se omo sa ba Lekma District Magistrate Court rupium na omasai abedi asem no ne mpre so na eho na ebusuafo no omudi yawdie kakra ebe mu bra na omudi Isaac epie efi court mu ho ubehwe na ka tournamento na ka wunya na police form ma ho kwan a na ka omebura branche na ohwa branche so hwe yehwe mu se wa badagibiti kakra na omutire mu se eda na asem no esiye no na area hofo no pa bedi ni pambro pa enti emtem pai kakra itino bi omaruman no sesiaro enya dia amode ne ko president mom on rusa kwakoto no wasel na 22nd May omasan aba abedi na asem na eye Mr Collins ej eye na se be ma eye unit na za matwa we fimu ne wofa ne mame enua be ma yene ne kasa na otre se ya hwere bia case no aba enye be bia asem ne betimi ebuo wa hanom iti at the Senate to pay for say ebe ya omo for docket no enko Attorney General ho na say Supreme Court and as a High Court na omo di asem na ebe ya be so ebe ya attention ni ebe timi aye dwuma nti na epiemu ene ewo Lekma District Magistrate Court eni
Wamanebo ebusafo yensem troni Benjamin ni agbo amanebo eno de akogo na wakasa efi Lekman District Magistrate Court yet wakase bono eso Rana Motors Care Assembly Plants eja wonum eba be ye kase ewo omanmu na amasaman na womo ewo Greater Accra Mantam hase na enra ena abrewe puma kwemu ema womo plant na mpo baabi a wonum kosue no wodan honum nyina adie wato nsafe na aredankwa ekufu adom na no nyam kota adwumadi na china na kasaye na mu no de to dwase womo kase a wombeye wo memu na ban ko a entimi entoni nyina no ntino aban eden hyehye policies ebegu akwan so se de beye betuma bokwan ato wonum amagana fo nyina da obi ani atumi age womo ahyen anampo womo kase ne ho amomo atumi atobi.
Today we are witnessing what will go down in history as another giant step towards Ghana's quest to establish herself as a regional hub for the automotive industry in sub-Saharan Africa. Rana Motors, with support from Kia Motors Corporation of Korea, the manufacturer of Kia vehicles, and one of the leading global vehicle manufacturers, has successfully established the only assembly plant for the production of Kia vehicles in West Africa. This facility has already offered direct employment to 50 young men and women, and it is expected to create some 300 indirect jobs, whilst contributing to the development of the local value chain for automobile assembly. The company, I've been informed, has the capacity to assemble some 30,000 vehicles annually, bringing the total capacity of domestically established assembly plants close to 100,000 vehicles per year. For me, this investment by Rana Motors is a strong indication of the private sector's support of my government's industrialization agenda and a sign of growing resilience by the private sector in these challenging times. I want to assure you, and indeed all private sector players, the government will continue to introduce sector-specific policy interventions which create a predictable policy regime and an enabling environment for businesses to survive and thrive. I acknowledge that a critical component for harnessing the full potential for an automotive industry is demand for assembled vehicles. As you may all be aware, I have directed through the Chief of Staff of the Office of the President the prioritization of the procurement of domestically assembled vehicles by state institutions to fulfill government's commitment of patronizing made in Ghana products. We're, however, mindful of the fact that the state alone cannot purchase the sufficient numbers of vehicles to be produced from our assembly plants, and would thus require Ghanaians also to patronize these vehicles. To stimulate demand for domestically assembled vehicles, we will soon be rolling out an asset-based vehicle financing scheme as it exists in developed economies to afford Ghanaians the opportunity to purchase vehicles from the Ghana Automotive Development Program.
Amaneboa abato ya pronso HSS Miss Tourism Ghana 2023 empanyfo aye amamre wonum adano edi.
Na ye boa na ya empower mebunu no ayewo omani mu nti ne ye hwe enim ne say most girls are mo hwe yen no mo beba nom de om ha be do me because ejani ni yen ka say easy mu ye den kakra and so esan ye de because at the end of it all no obehu say why nipa foforo na oni nipa be kasa oni mpinifo bedin kita ho oni afofro nso be kasa ube siesie ho epie nini na na ma wo ye oba asima se na ye ka no nti me pa obi a che say young lady bia o hwe me wo man yi mu odi no be ba do Miss Tourism organization afi na wo bon ho modia na wa audition about through the training process nini na so we are onanka so be hu say wa ya de papa ma ne ho ene nebusua
na say wo hwe theme na o si tourism, the heart of Ghana. Tourism, no, papa, tourism in Ghana, Kuma, na near Etua so see keep Ghana clean. Inti senior ye can't say tourism no, Ghana, Akuma no, ma ye CC, ye Ghana, na ye share, ye instruction year, edi pabefia manoniaba. So it brings about create jobs. It boosts tourism, it brings about social cohesion, it projects the image of tourism both in Ghana and internationally. Mbayo no omo bano mbabunu ni ebe sure omo nkran say omo nyina omo wo talent wo omo no omo talent no omo yire omo ho no omo for omo share miss tourism no one of the areas obetumi develop talent say ebe project the image of Ghana na promote tourism, boost the economy, create jobs especially for the youth.
Pi won fe ena omo sote but there may be omo ferry ana bibisa but me feel say ma ferry enye yi omo mra no me experience ye yi why into omo mra we di 18 ekwa kopim 26 pachobra na ebeka ye ho ne ma enye fe you never know ebi ana wakwa kwa wini audition ye sha se me ya.
Economic and Organized Crime Office yenya ntia se wonom enyom office baako ena o mahede siniye shepepa ewo bunu East Mountain mu eyetachima emenam so mpanyimfo akoka wonom ha waye amamra wode abie ano
ene fie round so de ne dan ma yen se yenyusu kopem bra betimi asi yen kase de no nti se yoko ba ha se a wo se ne ma ne bebre ono mu abonefo ne bebre ono ma the first say o ha no kra no scale mu esevo ase the motivation for them ye boa all other security services GRA police service immigration cast obia and na private businesses so kra say bia wo ye private business na obi pese obu obi awia wusika wa fa be fo kwan so no awia wusika ni nyina ya de ebetimi ahwehwem na ya che nipa bonefo ne de na fa emra kwan so afensi etimi man teteye se de be ya wo behu ekwan ya befa so se wo register o GRA ye be kire okwan ya befa so a wo bekọ na bibia ye pepepe se de be ya unko entia emra bi na emra ene wuni enti ya ba ha no ye be ye ne regional coordinating council ye ne omu nyina be ye adwuma se de be ya bibia oman wo interest wo mu no ye be bo ho ban se de be ya sika se call man ho no e be call man ho ne de ya adwuma e de aboa ye nyina ye oman
everybody's collective responsibility so oboa na ye fight against the crime na ye man efa ne tumapa ifra enia na mesre tichmanfo and Ghana fo nyina say ye kamom ampa na ye mfa ye tuma emwano na ye kase ye nyina ye ko achia katasihye ane proye na minimsa se fasa one which one ebema ye man Ghana afa ne tuma afra ama mai aba ye krabehwe
Report of management of Yoko and the blessing of the good people of the region, Techiman Municipal Assembly, the Regional Coordinating Council, and then some businessmen in town who supported my work. Here we are today. The baby born is being outdoored. Glory be to God.
Britain mano aso ye ewo ome emunu enya ntia se wonum ene gbese na nanam hemfo mpanyufo no adehia wo gbese bro no eso no wo aka abom amansiesi adwumade bro ni friends clean up exercise no wo akoye bi ewo Mensa Guinea Beach eno no ewo Asanta achi wono pepepe ewo Enkran na no ena development director ema British High Commission ani din ede Beth Cadman woni YouTube samtrofo nko twetwim no de to dwa se de rubber asia dosu bebrebe ewo beach no eha adwen no mo ayekra de so mbebo o my Ghana titru ni adehia mo gbese amomatumi asiese beach no ama no ayekama
Mensa Guinea Beach anase mpoano ni behu na kira kwan wo accent akiri wono mo a na ade wani ko twa wisi ahune santembo ana kopie mu ho no mo a obehu se efi aya agye aboso wo ho no mu akyerɛ sɛ emampo ano kokora mpo no enya akono na enya ni kanso enu nti na omde saa hunidi asiesie we anase cleaner pesticides we ni hye so e wo ho no se na be yom be prepare Roberts ahodoɔ ɛne efi ahodoɔ ni nyinaa ɛde afiri epona no ho no na ɛho nso ate ama ɛho no aya akono sɛ mpo be kɔ ho no sɛ wo kwa akwadwodwo ho e wo ho no asiesie we no British High Commission adwumayɛfo afei nananom ne yɛsi ahenefo a wɔn mo bɔse nananom atankonyansa ase so adehye ɛna afei adwumayɛfo a wɔn mo ɛdɔn Zoom Lion adwumayɛkuo no ɛna wɔn bɛka bɔ mu a wɔn mutumi asiesie mpo ano hɔ no ma hɔ no te yɛ paa na yɛ ne development director ɛde British High Commission Bert Cadman ɛde nsɛm utu dwa sɛ Roberts anase plastic waste no ɛyɛ ayagye aboso dododo wɔ beaches ahodoɔ wɔ my Ghana mu enti ɛbra wɔn te bibisa no na ɛwɔ so wɔn so de wɔn ho hyem na wɔn so boa mesi esi adwumadie no etimi ɛfa ne ntoma pɛfrɛ yie ɛwɔ ɛpona no ho
and partnership with the paramount chief. Without that commitment and partnership, something like this might be considered a waste of time or effort. But we have that buy-in and commitment of trying to reduce the plastic, reduce the impact that that has, and working as a partnership and community to make this a better place.
British High Commissioner HIR kona ke bon gan samo to money block manye nye lo yue wo mene wo bia ne wo ba wo je no koshishi ake no ni manye nye lo yue won wo mom won chuwe ni shini won ta o me aba wa wo mene wo ke British High Commissioner HIR wo ke jenshi na ka no nye adafi twa lo le nye ba le hu won pe nye ko ni nye twa adafi ko ni ke me ye ni ba wa wo ameba wo egbeme ka safombi ni ba wa wo Zoom Lion e afita wo kanye ba ko e we bi eyem amen lo simon e she ni chomo si ne ke ni chomo na efe ba do monye adafi twa lo anu ko ni wo ko na afi ni wo ba sa gan ni gan nagbe e ko mama papa na ebu.
Citizens of Ghana, especially Ghanaians for na yeti impona no we feel say it is better say yaba set example no almost betimi atwaso because cleanliness leads to godliness. Inti say na yeko na still they are going to keep this up and yes you best starting one you best summer one akokot because ya himfofo no ye ntimi be cleaning up ni embassy for na mumu betutu nioma within a short period say sia no ye be ma nkrofo aba inti ye hu sa ha ye fia omo amoye pata wo hanom no actually no they are squatters but as time go on we believe say ye be pe opening wo mu ono na ye be make sure say obe keep her clean inti ye ba na ha ye dirty no penyin na ye di ni see hanom no will prosecute the person to court.
I was for you to work as a bono so say din kan akane abohu dero amamo atie no ene eda ponda ema ewiasema nyina dansam trofo ndo bofo akesenya sam ketoa na Ghana hase ne ye hwe fa kase wo Ghana International Press Center enwo Ringway Estate na sesi a make say dwumadie no ekoso ama His Lordship Justice Dennis Dominic Ejay we Justice Emma Court of Appeal ena ekasa yenko homra sesi a
which we call ex-facie curia, and must constitute any one of the following. So if it does not constitute any one of the following, then it is not contempt. An act that scandalizes the court or tends to scandalize the court. An act that impedes or prejudices pending proceedings where a case is pending. Then you say something that this is the outcome of the case. If at the end of the day, the judge does not arrive at that conclusion, what happens? Insulting the court or a judge in a pending proceedings. Here it does not mean that someone cannot insult a judge. But if it is in respect of a pending proceedings, an act that seeks to undermine or lower the authority of the courts, an act that prejudices or tends to prejudice or interferes or tends to interfere with pending proceedings, or an act that interferes or tends to interfere with or obstruct the administration of justice in whatever manner. These are the only grounds that constitute criminal contempt. Occasionally you hear arguments that criminal contempt hasn't got any border. Whatever you say, it is not true. It is regulated by law. One other restrictions imposed on freedom of expression that most people are not in agreement is what I've just said. Human rights instruments, that power of contempt takes away human rights. But the essence is that whenever there is any issue, we rush to the court. Why do we rush to the court? We rush to the court because the court can maintain peace and order, peace and freedom. And if we do not respect the authority of the court, what will happen if something happens? Then there will be anarchy. That is why in the wisdom of our forefathers, it started from the common law. Common law, then our constitution and all the international instruments, they talk about the fact that the court's authority must be respected for the court to maintain its impartiality, to maintain peace and order, peace and freedom. The power of the superior courts to commit for contempt to themselves to maintain impartiality of the judiciary, which is inherent in common law, as I said, has been reenacted in Articles 19(12) and Article 126(2) of the Constitution of Ghana. Article 19(2) of the Constitution reiterates the position that the superior court shall have the power to commit to themselves and punish persons for contempt, despite the fact that the act or omission constituting contempt is not defined in a written law and the penalty not prescribed. The parameters is what I gave. There are only 7 grounds. Madam President, I move to the use of freedom of expression to drive all human rights. I stated in the introductory part of this lecture that human rights are many, including the right to life, right to liberty and security, protection from slavery and forced labor, right to a fair trial, right to respect of private and family life, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, freedom of assembly and association, right to an effective remedy, derogation in time of emergency in accordance with obligations under international law, economic rights, educational rights, cultural rights and practices, women's rights, children's rights, rights of the disabled, and the rights of the sick. And almost all of them are driven by freedom of expression to remind people of those rights and further expose the persons who are violating those rights of the people, and in particular, the violations of the rights of the common people. In a country where people's rights are violated, the entire country will be stricken with fear and will require journalists and both persons to expose those abuses and enlighten the citizenry of their fundamental human rights, which have been suppressed. The sick, the disabled, workers, women, children have their specific human rights available to them. And it will require persons, including journalists, to impart the information to the said persons who are entitled to those rights and do not know of their existence or have those rights violated. The country requires bold and honest persons to disseminate information on all fundamental human rights, and in particular, the general fundamental human rights, such as freedom of expression, to receive and impart information on television, radio, and electronic means of communication without frontiers. Educate the people on their rights to freedom of assembly and association, freedom to practice any religion and to manifest such practice, and expose pastors and priests who are abusing the fundamental human rights of their congregations to seek redress against them. Freedom of assembly, including the right to take part in processions and demonstrations, freedom of associations, and freedom of movement. Quite often we talk about violations of fundamental human rights. What happens to our brothers and sisters who are being abused by some pastors and priests in the name of religion? Relationship between human rights and development. The United Nations Secretary General 2005 had this to say about the relationship between human rights and development. He stated that, quote, "We will not enjoy the development without security. We will not enjoy security without development, and will not enjoy either without respect for human rights," unquote. The above quotation shows the relationship between security and development. There is no gainsaying that freedom of expression drives human rights, and there is a linkage between freedom of expression and all other human rights, and therefore criminalization of freedom of expression should be fiercely resisted. There is a direct relationship between human rights and development by the fact that human rights are at the center of development. And where human rights are not observed, it will negatively affect development. And the converse is the case, where human rights are protected and preserved. Where persons enjoy freedom of speech in an environment where there is no fear of intimidation, arrest, and prosecution, human beings who are the center of development increase productivity. In a country where right to life is not protected, there is no freedom of expression to expose abuses, the people work under fear and negatively impact on development. We have the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989, which deals with the mode for which information may be obtained from a public institution or a private institution which performs public function or receives public resources, and it is aimed at making public institutions accountable. So in effect, everybody holding public office is accountable to the people. And how do we compel them to account? It is through freedom of expression. There are restrictions imposed on right to information, similar to that of freedom of expression. Otherwise, where there are no restrictions on right to information, and an information which is restricted by law is obtained, the information may be published or expressed to defeat the purpose of the restrictions imposed on freedom of expression. Every individual is entitled to the fundamental human rights and freedoms contained in Chapter 5 of the Constitution, subject to the rights and freedoms of others and for public interest. The preservation and protection of the individual's human right to promote the dignity of man is the highest attainment of human development. The overall development of Ghana will be incomplete without the protection of the fundamental human rights and freedoms of the individuals who are at the center of development. Article 41 of the Constitution is a very important provision, and it is found in Chapter 6, that is one of the provisions on the directive principles of state policy. And the chairman of the Media Commission alluded to this issue. Article 41 provides the duties and obligations of the individual, and if the individual whose rights and freedoms are safeguarded by the Constitution performs those rights and obligations imposed on them without fear.
I was on for year to work as a bonus, so not yet the more ako amahudoso and some emunia the more call Rwanda manu emuna who metis some a few wabato ya prince and a jumuina in Sua Toa Mekas wo who are just saying yasam getua and I'm so am a yiri a cheer from Crofoso. I must say nipa best or ha any encono 109 and a afamu actual one enqua. What I say a more at your kunu enum 95 one a free more a womano ato yefem and a 914 akanon. So won ko free mu e wo man etifi eye northern province honum na manebo ko so kire mu amrado eye governor a wo atoye fam honum no woni BBC nsam trofo atwetwe nkomo amode atodwa se ahyase ne de nipa be se 50 na di nkan FM mu ehwe wo mkwa wo mo se de nsu asi atwa na dwi e wo Rwanda fam honum no ebi NC sada se nkrofo pi e no mu adan adwiri agu fam a wo munya ba bi mpo enfo nti ento na no e na mpanyimfo e de atodwa se wo main road e wo eye atoye fam wonom no de ben Lake Kivu no ye se kura de nkrofo ntimi emfa so esanse ensuo no tosa nam se na no odin tasase so wo so kakra makwan mu de e yade a aseye papa na no e na mpanyimfo e de atodwa sa turo nche mu aboafo se dodo no a e na wo mu free mantama ahodo ni maboa wo wo munam kwaso eko akwakwohwe sede niema esi ekoso honom na no na ewiem sakraf ye adwumayfo Ghana anampo Rwanda Meteorological Agency de atodwa se bosumi ewo mu ide Rwanda memu ensuo ebeto papa awuzanfo ye homeso amakudie mu nsam abrante bongo di fara ede abetoa so ye twen ho abasisia